What did your school waste money on that nobody liked? They made a huge screen with 4 huge plasma screens and put it in a very random place in a very random building hall. No signal, no signal. No signal, no signal. A clock tower with no clock. Name tags. Shortly after Columbine and all those other shootings peaked in frequency. It was supposed to keep outsiders from getting in the school unnoticed and shooting everyone. But at the time, people doing the shootings were always students. So we joked they were bulletproof. Why not just school IDs? Why name tags? My school had IDs, but we had to wear them on a lanyard so that everyone could see them. Maybe this is what they meant by name tag. Some of my classmates won a bunch of money for our school. Our school was one of the lowest funded schools in the district. The district took the money and spent it on another school. Hey, reminds me, when I was a sophomore, my school was next in line to get renovations and upgrades. Only half classes even had air conditioning. Instead, the district built a new school that took half of my graduating class. They also took teachers, so my classes were still overcrowded. What happens after they found out? It was upsetting, but not unexpected. The district didn't care about us even though our school had the highest test scores. In fact, that school is being shut down in the next few years. I just went to the last reunion back in December. It sucks. New TVS in the cafeteria that just show the morning announcements. Edit, they already send out emails that have the morning announcements in them. The large schoolyard at my school had a set of planters in the center. They were basically 4 triangles made of brick that pointed in at each other and created an X-shaped walkways between. The outside sides had a bench each attached. People would sit and chat to each other on the benches, teachers and students alike. There was very little litter or vandalism. The plants were kinda pretty, insofar as any secondary schooler would care to notice. One year a duck made her nest in one of the planters, and apart from a few "oh hey, a duck nest" comments, it was left alone. Then for some reason, the school decided to rip the planters out. Took them 2/3 of the school year to do it and blocked off the X walkways so everyone had to crush by on the outside lanes between classes. Everyone was super curious as to what the planters would be replaced by. Turns out, nothing. They simply bricked over the holes left by the planters and left it as a huge empty space. We didn't even get new benches, so no one had anywhere to sit during break. People started to miss the plants since the lack of color left the whole area kinda bland. We also kept to the old X walkway since stepping over the former planters felt weird. They spent money to deprive students of something nice. iPads for the kindergarten. They were intended to have educational apps on them that kids could play on at indoor recess. Believe it or not, most kindergarteners would rather play on the swings or play with dolls than learn to write their name on an app. No one used them. No one liked them, and they all broke within 2 months. HRMM. My indoor recess at that age was the whole group using these big puzzle piece foam blocks to build castles and then crawl all over them. We would not have cared about the iPad either. My kindergarten, we were on a mission to dig to the bottom of the sandbox. Edit, we took turns and in songs. An anatomically ambitious statue of our animal mascot was on boys' varsity soccer team in high school. New head coach wanted to emphasize more analytical approach and as such had boosted club by a 10,000 goalpost camera. None of the team liked the idea anyway, especially since the girls' soccer team used their money for new jerseys and nicer balls, and they still made it farther in their playoffs than we did almost every year. As it turns out, the coach couldn't figure out how to put the camera together, and we never used it. Biggest waste of 10,000 I've ever seen. But I need the absolute best. Like the pros use. That's the only way I can become a pro too. Trash cans with the school logo on them and banners. They tried hipping us up about new trash cans on the morning show. At my school, they took away some of the tables in the cafeteria until we kept it cleaner. We just sat on the floor instead. My elementary school didn't even have tables. We just sat on the floor in the halls. When 65 TVs were like 4,000 a pop, they set about 8 of them around campus that just displayed the time. 4,000.0 clocks, not to mention whatever they used as a video source to send to the display. My high school purchased a vending machine that only contained Swerve. What is Swerve, you ask? Why on God's green earth would someone make that? I'm just as confused and mildly disgusted. Ask the dwellers of this sub. My college bought a small restaurant out for $1 million to build $1 million brick gate that doesn't close. Mine bought out a shopping center, built a dorm with restaurants no one eats at, and now won't let anyone use it. Edit, a lot of people are asking about it. So I found an article, a 3D printer that the teachers won't learn how to use, so now nobody is allowed to use it. My school got 4 of those, and the teacher responsible for them actually encouraged us to take the SolidWorks course to learn about 3D design. It was actually a lot of fun, and I still have some of the objects I created. I thought my school was like royalty since we have 2, but 4. And yeah, SolidWorks is actually really fun to do, especially when you get it right. This happened so many times when I went to school, but I specifically remember actual nice computers for art that weren't allowed to be turned on because the hippie art teacher didn't believe in it. Turns out they also licensed several copies of the Adobe Creative Suite that went to waste. That is bullshit. Graphic design is fucking awesome. What a waste of the Adobe Suite. Hopefully, your teacher leaves soon so people can use the computers. A memorial tree was planted for a girl who was killed right before graduation by her family and friends. The school allowed it, and there was a beautiful Japanese maple tree there for like 10 years. Apparently, they just cut it down and had no reason why. Family is pissed. Alumni are pissed. Edit, I found the article. She actually died of a rare cancer a year after graduation. A memorial tree was planted for a girl who was killed right before graduation by her family and friends. I misinterpreted that sentence at first. Me too. I thought she was killed by her family. My son's current school sent out an email to parents announcing that they'd like to add voice projection to every class. He's in 1st grade and there are 20 kids in his class. Totally unnecessary. They had a demo session and it sounded horrible. My high school got these midway through my junior year and they sucked. The range wasn't great, and the receiver in one classroom would pick up the microphone in another, and the battery life was awful, so the teachers rarely used it. The best thing that they were used for was the one time that my teacher noticed a kid in the room across the hall was asleep in class. They were watching a video, and the other teacher had stepped out of the room for a moment and walked over to the door so that the other room's receiver would pick up his mic, and said, "Wake up," and then closed his door. My teacher uses a megaphone because he's the Heath and PE teacher. So when we misbehave in class, he closes the door and plays Baby Shark through the megaphone. And thanks, now you got it looping in my head. When I was still a student, my school spent almost $200,000 to paint the roads outside our school. You read that right. Almost $200,000 of our precious tuition dollars to paint the roads outside blue and yellow. To pour salt on this painful wound. The paint job didn't even make it through winter. So, just to reiterate, $200,000 for 3 months of painted road. I think I'm still angry about it. That's got to be the dumbest one I've read in here. A lot of them are dumb in that money was spent on technology or other things that wouldn't be used. But those at least keep some value after being bought. This is just throwing money away. My high school wasted a ton of money buying 2 golf carts. Their reasoning was it allowed staff to get to any dangerous scenes faster. Except we never had any accidents, and they were mostly used for joyrides by the hall monitors. Our new Slick Willie superintendent insisted on buying an educational product for $500,000 that consisted of software that nobody wanted or could use. It was from his girlfriend. Slick Willie went to jail. One of the schools in our district paid an astronomical fee to an artist to create an artwork for the hall of the school. Paid for the dude's room and board for like a year, and he produced a large polished piece of wood. No, literally, that's it. It was supposed to be shaped like a heart, but looks more like a butt and is now known as the Bart. My school just spent tens of millions of dollars on a remodel that includes a new commons and front office area, which were not needed, but no new classrooms, which were desperately needed. The old commons was warm, inviting, bright and beautiful. It wasn't old. The new commons is dark, cold, sterile and uninviting. The exterior was changed too. The entire front of the school used to be attractive. Now it looks like a prison. I think maybe the architect presented the design as a joke, but our principal liked it, so the architect just rolled with it. They cut out welding, machine shop, wood shop, and graphic design to buy a $1 million scoreboard for football. A scoreboard? Seriously? And I thought my school making an entire sports hall only for football teams was stupid. Our mascot was a rocket, and a certain percentage of school construction money had to be spent on art. They spent $90,000 commissioning a giant rocket sculpture for the main field entrance. When it was unveiled, The artist had made one tiny change to the design. Instead of a pointy rocket tip, he'd gone with a rounded, mushroom tip. We thought it was hilarious, especially when they cut off the tip as their solution to the problem. But nobody liked it. They circumcised the rocket. They decided all of the glue sticks had to be purple. I guess purple glue does taste as good as purple crayons. I distinctly remember the purple glue sticks smelling better. It's a tragedy when schools try to get tech for their students and basically buy junk because they have no idea what they're doing. And the next time someone brings up doing it right, they just point to it failing last time. We've tried nothing and we're all out of ideas. It's usually due to government regulations that they have to ask for bids from companies. Then they go with the lowest bidder, typically, who provides them with junk. I had a professor who wanted to buy a few oscilloscopes. He personally knew a manager at HP Keysight Agilent, whomever it's called now, and negotiated a price of 30 of the original cost. But he was forced to put a bid request and the school went with the lowest bid, so they got their oscilloscopes, half of which didn't work, at a lower price, but also had to dispose of a bunch of non-functioning screws at the same time. Bring the cost higher than buying the brand new or gently used screws from the manufacturer. I'm a teacher. My first year, the school leader bought a ping pong table for the lounge in an attempt to make school more fun and relaxing. It simply became a surface to put copies on. It sounds like they had good intent, it just didn't work out. And at least those tables aren't too expensive, so it wasn't a crazy amount. Son's elementary school, PTO had an excess of funds. They decided to spend it on a buddy bench. A buddy bench is a bench that you can sit on if you want. Buddy. In theory, it sounds like a decent idea, except that it was placed in the hallway near the office and none of the kids wanted to be identified as someone who didn't have a friend. Nobody ever sits on it. I thought the idea is that you put the buddy bench near the playground so kids would just naturally invite other kids to play. Why in the world would you put it in the ostracization zone near the office? This isn't common knowledge, so I was really the only one incensed by it. But I worked for Cisco Foods as a baker at university, and the upper echelons of the administration had hired their own personal pastry chef to make these extravagant desserts for their meetings. The pastry chef was legit. She made absolutely amazing desserts of a wide variety. Every day, loaded them onto a cart, and with her baker's outfit and hat on, would wheel it up to their daily administration meetings. Her salary was paid for by the students of the school, so that the administrators could dine on first-class pastries and desserts made from scratch each day. She was really good at her job and actually helped me improve in the bakery. But I was so mad her job even existed, simply to provide pastries to people who just sat around and decided how the school's money was spent. I obviously didn't make a stink about it to anyone because she was my friend and I wouldn't ever dream of putting her employment at risk, but I couldn't help feeling like her entire career was to make fat cats fatter, and it just boiled my blood. I'm also going to assume, from my time in corporate events planning, that most of the pastries went to waste, since even the fattest cat can't eat more than a couple of croissants and most people won't even touch them. TVs. Like just random TVs in the hallway that showed slideshows and shit. Tens of thousands of dollars when we could have just put up bulletin boards. My school has loads of TVs that I don't recall ever see turned on. Cameras installed in nearly every inch of the school, not for student safety, but because the school board didn't trust the kids. My school was miles behind other high schools. Old textbooks, sometimes not enough textbooks. Computers were junk. No in-school programs. They spent every ounce of money on cameras and putting the rest in the school board's pockets. My high school spent a bunch of money on this system to play popular songs for the last minute of passing time between classes. So we'd hear popular music and as a convenient way to know to get to your next class. Then they started playing Friday by Rebecca Black every Friday once. Then it was the only song on Fridays. Then it was the only song. Every day, 5 times a day. Thank God. That was my senior year. No idea if they still do it. Ooh, yes, I'm prepared for this answer. My school's mascot was a knight, and it was rumored that the school had the choice of installing a pool at the high school, or to commission a large, think like 25 feet long metal sculpture of a knight on a horse, and to hang it from the ceiling in the back hallway. They opted for the horse. I was waiting for Kanoa to pop up on here. Seeing that stupid pile of scrap shoved into the rafters like an afterthought is something I won't miss. That place was fucked, and I'm just happy I never have to go back. especially if Smith is still the VP. Fuck that guy. They bought flags of all the states and put them around this caged-in area full of gravel. They caged in the gravel to stop students from walking across the gravel. They also bow flags in the school colors to line the fence around campus. Only thing is, we were in an area which can get very windy with zero windshield, so those flags took a beating. By mid-year they were an ugly, frayed mess. Honorable mention was the bridge they built across the courtyard. We weren't allowed to walk across that. They eventually paved over. Shout out to the flagpole a kid did for Eagle Scouts that was taken down that same year by admin. And big shout out to the admin during my little sister's years there, where they sealed off all the inner hallway doors and added extra doors outside to stop students from traveling between classes indoors. Don't know what that solved except adding extra minutes onto your travel time between class. I hung out with several guys on the programming team and they figured out how to upload memes onto it. They couldn't figure out who did it, so no one got in trouble. The school had a dual raffle in which they had a raffle in which the person would win a bunch of money via gift cards, and to enter, they had to give up their vape pens. It worked as well as you'd expect it to. In 2011, my college spent $32,000 to have Snooki come in as an inspirational speaker in some misguided attempt to connect with freshmen. Around the same time, there was a growing student-led movement to make the school more affordable. The student board revolted. People confronted her during her speech. It was a glorious mess. That sucks because my shul had two fucking epic inspo guys. One was a chalk artist, and he talked about how he was shy and bullied and shit, but then found art and it helped him come out of his shell. And while he's talking, he was making a fucking massive chalk drawing of mountains and shit. That was really awesome. Then we had a guy put on a show about the dangers of electricity. He worked for the electrical co-op, so he made some shit go fucking bang. Unlike Dare, it was actually effective. No one was fucking with electricity after that. I went to a Catholic school, high school. Very few of the students were actually Catholic and went there because the local public school district was terrible. We won some contest or grant and the school said they would allow the students to pick what the money was spent on. The options were new flooring for the gym, renovate the courtyard next to the chapel into a prayer garden, or renovating the courtyard next to the cafeteria into an outdoor eating space. Most people voted for new gym floors, and some people voted for the outdoor eating space. I do not know of anyone who voted for the prayer garden. Guess what won? The prayer garden. People, even teachers, were furious as the voting was clearly rigged to give us the appearance of a choice. If they really wanted a prayer garden, they should have just done the work without putting it to a vote. The funny thing about the prayer garden is that they actually made it nice and put in benches and plants and whatnot, but it was always locked and never used. Administration would often say during tours, "Oh, look at our lovely prayer garden for students. They voted for it." No, we didn't. Murals in the bathrooms that replaced the mirrors. Edit, wow, my first comment ever on Reddit and I got an award. Thanks. You sure they replaced them and didn't just put a mural on the wall opposite? My 7 workstation laptops with Quadro GPUs, easily 2500 each for an elementary K-6 school. Those machines were designed for CAD work and media production, but were instead solely used for web browsing and Microsoft Word. I don't have any idea why they bought them. Likely bought with grant money that had to be 100 spent. I knew a guy who hopped between schools, getting them all kind of out of the woodwork grants. He would buy tons of tech and hire us to install it. There are some small schools that are loaded with nice tech. It was really cool IMO. Laminated ID cards that everyone had to wear around their necks on some dorkiest lanyard. No one fucking did it, so they made it punishable by detention. After that, half the students still didn't do it, and the detention hall became so overwhelmed that they began to make backlogs. After a few weeks, not wearing a lanyard gave you a detention 2 months from then. Eventually, detention became so backlogged that students started doing more severe transgressions because they would have graduated before they could actually be forced to go to detention. After about a month, no one had to wear their ID cards at all anymore. They said it was for security purposes, so no one could sneak into the school. The thing is, you could put literally anything in the lanyard, and no one would check if it was your actual student ID card. I had a blank index card in mine and no one ever said anything to me. If someone actually wanted to sneak into the school, all they would need is a lanyard and no one would ever check if it's actually authentic or not. My school did that too. And if you didn't have your card, you would have to wait to get lunch until the very end when there was almost no food left. It was the worst. Oh God. My school's administrators learned really quickly not to fuck with our lunches. Freshman year, they tried to give our class assigned seats because we were too rowdy at lunch, and as a result, someone started a food fight literally every day for about half a semester until they gave up. Our school paid to cover a huge lot with cement just to have a ceremony on it announcing a new building. Then they tore it up 2 months later to start construction. My school's FEs went towards having nice cement for press pictures. What a joke. My school wasted so much money on plastic ID cards that you were supposed to scan into every room to assure you were there, and the IDs were also keys to get into the buildings. If you didn't have your card, you didn't get in and also get in school suspension. It wasn't a bad system BC, you could easily take a photo of your ID to scan into rooms, but you'd have to bum a buddy to get into a building. But once there were internet problems, the whole system would shut down, and living in a rural wheat town, you could expect wind and rain and tornadoes and all that fun junk. My college spent $200,000 on a conference table. It made national headlines. Random TVs playing school propaganda by the dining hall. Yes, we have like 5 flat screens, 2 in each cafeteria and 1 in THF lobby. Nobody ever looks at them, and they have slideshows going 247 saying be kind or whatever. A poster would suffice. And you can barely see the stuff on the TV anyway because it's so high up. When I went to college, the local NFL team paid for the school to go from a grass field to artificial turf. The school never said it was only half paid for by the team. My siblings had a whole year without paper, printers, no raises for staff, cutting school programs, and they slashed the art budget. The football team still got new uniforms that year though. My university somehow managed to spend $1.4 million on a clock tower. And it's not even a nice clock tower. In fact, it's one of the ugliest structures I've ever seen. And the time is always wrong. The memes are pretty good though, so there is an upside. Also, some students treat it as a god for some reason. They leave offerings of apples from the nearby dining hall at its base. My town got a brand new middle school, and somehow they spent $40,000 on a gaint metal palm tree that they called the Learning Tree. One of the chair people essentially commissioned it from a relative. So many of us were super pissed. It didn't even have lights and there was no way to clean it, so it just sat there like the gaint. Waste of money. It is just collecting dust. A graveyard. Instead of spending money on the students of the school, they decided that a graveyard would make them more money. Like, who is the graveyard for? Like dead alumni or something? Who signed off on that? Large concrete blocks that were placed in the middle of the field for no reason. Well, we liked it at first, not so much after. I followed a product development study and we got a fancy industry-grade laser cutter in our workplace. Then after a couple of people were able to use it, the teacher decided it needed cleaning. She proceeded to use a fucking toothpick and shove it into the nozzle where the laser comes out, damaging the mirror inside the machine. We had this thing for less than a week, for putting more air conditioning in staff rooms but not in classrooms. Whenever I was in high school, my senior year, they decided to make technology improvements. So, they swapped a lot of old textbooks for iPads. They placed unnecessary TVs in the hallways. Waste of money. I don't understand the whole TV fixation thing. My science classroom in high school had a massive flat screen television which we rarely used for anything. Halfway through the year, they took it out and put in an even bigger flat screen television that we never used for anything. It's not uncommon, especially for government agencies. Your school probably got a budget allotment, and if they didn't spend it, there wouldn't be the same allotment the next year. Also, school bond measure are frequently earmarked for certain things. So if they got $1 million for tech, they have to spend it on tech, or they're defrauding the public. They absolutely could have spent the money better, I'm sure. But old people get hung up on looking cool, so they filled the school with stuff that was futuristic. They were kids. SE have flat-screen TVs in the school cafeteria that simply project what the cafeteria is serving. Would whiteboards not suffice? Bailing out the son of the principal from jail with the grant money from the EU provided to renew the computer facility. My country is still a developing country, so many new technologies are not implemented and properly operated. 2 years ago, My high school installed an ID and a fingerprint scanner at the school main entrance gate so they can track whether the student came to school or not. Every student had to pay like $5 minus $10 to get a personal ID card and get their fingerprint in the system. The principal was very serious with this the first week, then couple of weeks later, students started forgetting their ID card. Some of them purposely annoyed the teachers as if they don't know how to use the machine or even put their fingers in the scanner. Then the machine started malfunctioning and eventually just stopped working one day and stood at the entrance gate, all dusty. A year later, they did this again and stopped in a month. I don't know what's happening now. Our high school was way too into our football team. One year they decided to replace our grass football field with a turf one. I don't know why, but even the football players would tell me we had the best grass field in the area. I don't know why they replaced it. You know, when high school football players say the school is spending too much money on them, something is wrong. Turf is an upfront cost, but it's a lot cheaper to maintain over the long term. I remember it happened in Allen. TX. They got a bond issue to build a $50 million stadium. Once it was done, they had their final inspection and saw a big crack in the foundation. So basically the football team couldn't use it for the season due to the school district making the company repair it out their own pocket. It went back and forth, and finally the company who did had to bite the bullet and do the repair. When I started secondary school, we had a canteen with proper home-style food being served. Cooked fresh, real meat and vegetables. Good portion sizes. All the students loved it and it was well used. School decided to replace this with a fast food style set up with processed burgers and fries to try and appeal to the kids. And up the prices too. Within a month, nobody visited the canteen anymore. Practically every kid in the school started bringing food from home. It took 3 months till they changed everything back again. Massive expense for absolutely no reason. They did that at our school. The cafeteria ladies used to make fresh food every day. Homemade pizza, homemade everything. It was really good. Then they brought in the processed, packaged food, which no one wanted. The pizza slices were tiny and frozen, and the tacos were tiny little tacos that weren't enough to feed a bird. Also, prices went up. Food from home was brought in and students were buying more and more snacks, which you were allowed to buy. We had a bake sale to raise money for something and all the baked goods were gone in like 5 minutes and we had a lot. Renovating parts of my high school where it wasn't needed, especially when they could be funding for better classes. My first high school wasted money on a war. Maybe I should explain. The school where I spent my freshman and sophomore years had 2 parking lots, one of which was reserved for faculty and guests. The second one, the place where students could park their cars, was near the back of the campus. And although it was larger and arguably more convenient for many reasons, it became the site of a long-running battle. See, on one fateful Monday morning, people arrived to discover that dozens of speed bumps had been attached to the asphalt. That probably would have been fine, except for the fact that the mounds in question were much taller than the standard sort, to the point where even the slowest moving vehicle would end up scraping against them. Complaints from both students and parents were quickly filed with the administration, but the official response was that nothing would be done. Something was done anyway, though. Nobody ever found out who had been responsible. But a few days later, word started to spread that the speed bumps had been removed. As it turned out, someone, or more likely, a group of someones, had ventured out in the middle of the night, hacked the offending humps from the parking lot, and returned the space to its original state. Needless to say, this didn't sit well with the people in charge of the school, and they wasted no time in taking action, by which I mean that they paid to have new obstacles which were still too tall installed. Another removal happened after that. Another reconstruction followed, along with the hiring of a dedicated security guard. To the best of my knowledge, that was when the war finally ended. The ceasefire may have come about because the latest speed bumps were finally short enough to actually get over, but my guess is that the vigilante vandals just gave up. Either way, I'm fairly sure that I wound up experiencing the one moment in history that saw someone being hired for the express purpose of protecting speed bumps. TLDR, in a war between students and administrators, it's the speed bumps that suffer. I need to find jobs like this where people get paid to do dumb shit like guard speed bumps. I absolutely understand them installing speed bumps. Kids with their first car are idiots. However, if you make them too tall like they did, it's ignorant and, yes, more annoying than useful. They bought a bunch of laptops for a magnet program. They were the worst laptops. My friend also didn't help by adjusting the battery settings to read critical at 98 and shut down. Instead of spending it on students, the asshole old people in my town decided to spend $400,000 on a sign for the front of the high school out of spite. There had already been a sign. Are you sure they didn't buy a sign for a couple hundred and steal the rest? My school buys so much useless things, or at least when I went to. They dump all their money on the football team. Obviously, the football team doesn't really care, but other people did. One thing that everyone has a common hatred for, that the school board, even the football team, is the inflatable the school got. From what I heard, it costed about $4,000. It's this big-ass inflatable that people could walk through. The inflatable has the school's mascot on it, and it's just plain weird. There were so many ways the school could have spent that money on, but to choose to spend it on stupid inflatable that is only used like 3 times a year. Guess inflation screwed over their finances. Our old superintendent had a salary of over $200,000. Plus, in the year where a bunch of teachers had to be laid off because of a budget shortage, he got paid another $200,000 for unused vacation days. It should also be mentioned that it's been an open secret of him being a bit of a creep for decades. He's always had a very nice car with his initials as a vanity plate, and he resigned last year after sexual harassment allegations. Another thing I should mention is that this is all coming from a pretty poor district.